three speakers to come to the dais here. Folks, you'll notice there's a microphone up front here and a microphone about the center of the room right over to my left, your right. If you have a question for Dr. Jaley, who is making his way up, Dr. Vieira, who maybe ran from the room screaming, I don't know, or Ambassador Dr. Keys, who I'm going to invite to come up, come to the microphones. I will do my best to moderate. And gentlemen, what we'll do here so everyone can hear you, and it more importantly can be picked up by the broadcast, is I will, whichever one of you wishes to speak, take the wireless microphone and just pass it around. So now's the time to ask your questions, folks. Microphone there, microphone here, and with that, I'll step aside.
And folks, when you do go to the microphone, please do not take them out of the stand. They're all set up, so just speak right to them. You don't need to yell. Thank you.
Go ahead, Pam.
Dr. Keys, I have a question for you. I know here in New Hampshire there was a movement to get the sacrament of marriage out of government because government should have never taken one of the 7 sacraments of the church. And that would alleviate a lot of the problems that we have today. What is your opinion of this?
Well, first, I think that we misconstrue what's involved in the whole licensing procedure. And in fact, I have sort of even personal experience now that our government doesn't pretend that I needed permission from the government to marry. My wife was from India. We got married in a ceremony that was performed under the laws and authority of the Catholic Church in Bombay, India. Calcutta, rather, India. And it was valid, and I had no need to go through any other ceremony. All I did when I got back to the United States was to pursue the necessary procedures to make sure that the United States government took cognizance of the fact that we were married. And why does the government have to do that? See, sometimes people forget an implication of the statement in the Declaration. To secure these rights. Can you secure a right you don't see for a person or institution that you don't recognize? No. The government has to recognize a marriage in order to make sure that the unalienable rights that are involved in the marriage and the family it produces will be respected by all entities that are part of the government, because that's part of the duties of a just government, to secure unalienable rights. So the notion that you could somehow get the government out of the business of acknowledging marriages and et cetera, that's false. Couldn't happen, because the government then wouldn't be able to do one of its most important functions. And the final point is the other reason I think you couldn't get them out of the business is because when the government has to secure rights, wouldn't we have to make sure that they had established a criterion for marriage that was inclusive of marriages, especially when we have different denominations, different understandings of religious backgrounds, how marriage is, and so forth and so on? There would have to be a set of simple rules applied to everybody that said, whatever religious right or background, we're going to recognize that what has happened is a marriage, and all you have to do is let us know that it happened according to these criteria, which if you satisfy them, will then satisfy us that that's a marriage, because we don't really have the authority to marry you. See? And then you finally get to the point of the atheists, who are the ones who are the people who don't have religious background and so forth. They want the government to marry them, and they'll contend that the certificate issued by the government should be their marriage document. That's not because it gives them permission to marry. It's because they want to marry, and it certifies that their marriage will have the same validity as marriage performed under various and assorted religious rites. Can you imagine a way to get out of that? Because I can't see it. That's part of equity. That's part of the need to treat everybody and give them an equal opportunity if they otherwise qualify to marry. And so I would say no. People are saying that, a lot of people, but I think it's because they don't understand the nature of an alienable right. It's that confusion with freedom. See, if you think of right as simply a freedom, then you say, well, government doesn't have any business getting involved with people's freedom to marry. But it does have a business to secure the right that is involved, to respect the authority that derives from that right over children, and to have a systematic way of doing so that will be equitable for all of us.
Thank you.
Sir.
Yes, I have a question for Dr. Vieira. Can a New Hampshire legislator limit the authority of a delegate at a constitutional convention as called for under Article 5 of the federal Constitution?
Well, first you'd have to tell me what the call is going to be that Congress gives. If you read Article 5, Congress has the power to call a convention when certain events happen. And if you tie that in with Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, the so-called necessary and proper clause, Congress has the power to execute what is necessary and proper to put into execution all the other powers in the Constitution. So when Congress gets that call, it is going to define some procedure and some qualifications for the delegates coming from the various states. I seriously doubt that if that's done, and I would assume Congress would do that because they're going to exercise their powers to the very limits, that any state would be in a position to override that.
So you're saying that a state legislator can tell a delegate what he can propose for amendments?
No, I think that Congress is going to say what is going to be proposed for amendments. Now, it might open up.
No, Article 5 says that the delegates will come to the convention to propose amendments. Congress is only going to hold the convention.
Congress is going to call the convention. And my understanding of the word call is they're going to set the parameters for that convention. And they could very well say, we're going to have these amendments because the states have asked for them, and then we're going to open it up to other amendments. But what if that call specifies the only amendment that will be considered, the only amendments that will be considered will be A, B, and C? The states have no authority to override Congress's power to call the convention. It's exclusive.
I think you're missing my question here. Congress calls the convention. They don't say anything about what the states are going to propose at this convention.
They don't?
No.
Why, I don't understand why not. When you call the convention, you set the parameters.
Who sets the parameters?
Congress.
No. Congress only calls the convention, tells you where it's going to be held, and maybe how many delegates go there. But they can't control the delegates when they come down there to discuss how many amendments they might want to choose.
Well, you wait and see what they do. All right, I look at that word call, and it tells me that they can set the parameters of that convention, including the business that's going to go on at that convention.
Not a chance.
See, if I can make one comment, because I think there's a confusion, but I always go back to the original situation. Because the first constitutional convention was called by the states, and the people who went to it were chosen by the states. And they also, by the way, had a call to do something that did propose what they were supposed to do. Oh, and it was for the purpose of what?
Purpose of amending the Articles of Confederation.
Right, hold it. And that was it. There was a big discussion amongst the people who were attending the Constitutional Convention. Big, but not big in importance. Though not altogether big in size or anything, because they all seemed to, a lot of them, to agree on this one point. The logic was this, and I don't say I agree with it or disagree with it, but I think it's the only thing likely to be remembered at a present called convention by the people who attend that convention. They will remember when the founders talked themselves into the notion that they did not have to restrict themselves to amending the Articles of Confederation, but could in fact propose an entirely new constitution. Why? The call was restricted. How could they go beyond the call? Because ultimately anything that is done is going to have to be put before the sovereign. And so the states are not, in that case, the sovereign that's going to decide. And since we're going to have to put it before the sovereign that will decide, we owe that sovereign our best judgment of what is necessary, and we are going to take it. And I'm not saying I agree. I think that was pretty kind of shrewd reasoning, and I'm not sure entirely logical, but they made that argument. And I would contend, and this is talking about human nature, not the terms of the convention or what the Constitution says. I think it's simple human nature. Because the reason so many different forces are pushing for the Article 5 convention is very suspicious to me. Do you find anybody on the scene in this country that reminds you of the logic and wisdom of the founders? I mean, I every now and again find somebody I hear like Dr. Vieira, and I say to myself, "Ooh, isn't that wonderful?" But I think it's wonderful because it's like finding a bucket of water in a desert. See? The people who actually go to the convention are going to be the very people we have all around us now, and there's going to be a healthy proportion of them who hate the Constitution and who will be sent to that convention by people who hate it and mean to destroy it. And they will look for every avenue to do so, and the same people cooperating with them to destroy the country in Congress will make sure that there are people cooperating with them to destroy the country at that convention. And that's my fear.
And you also have to differentiate between the call, whatever that may be and what it may entail, and how the delegates are going to respond to that call when they get to the convention, or how a state legislature may respond to that call. And all I can say is there is no limitation about what Congress can think that it can put into that call. And if the state delegates respond to that in one way or another, down the line, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to get into litigation. There's going to be some challenge to this. This is a rat's nest because we don't know, we really have no precedent other than the original example, and as was just pointed out, that didn't work out as it was originally proposed. So, so if you tell me that Congress cannot in the call set up the procedures, cannot list the amendments that are going to be considered, cannot determine who the delegates or how they will be selected, all I tell you is wait and see. Look at the Congress you have now and tell me that they will not exercise their necessary and proper power, which they think they have in extremis, in the extreme form, in whatever way they want to do it to promote what they want to come out of that convention. Because that's exactly what's going to happen. We do not have in Congress Madison, Jefferson, George Mason, even Alexander Hamilton. Right? We have Harry Reid, and you go down that list.
Thank you. I think we have time for two more. Right here, sir.
Thank you. And this is for any one of you to answer. If we had that situation where there were no John Adams, no James, no Madison, nobody that came forth out of our current Congress, and we did have a runaway convention, could we not assemble 1/4 or 1/3 of the states to stop that runaway? The sovereigns, 1/3 or 1/4 of the sovereigns would not emerge to stop that?
You want to take the chance?
Yes, because look what we have now.
No,
we
no,
have
no.
a total runaway train. I'm willing to take a chance to stop it.
You want to take the chance of putting forth a convention that will give us Rexford Tugwell's new state constitution and hope that 1/3 of the states will vote against that?
Yes, because I get to stop it.
Meaning no offense. It reminds me, because I hear a lot of folks who speak very greatly about what they're going to do to stop this terrible business. And you're just saying that right now. You're going to stop this from happening. And yeah, we have mechanisms before us right now, including, for instance, the Iran Treaty. The Iran Treaty could have been stopped by 1/3 of the United States Senate. Didn't require 2/3. But not only did they not follow the procedure that would have allowed a blocking third to stop it, they actually invented a procedure that actually stood the provision on its head and required 2/3 in order to stop it. And you think that the political system that produced that result in the Congress is going to produce a different result not only in the convention, because, by the way, the reason we're suffering from the Congress we have is because the same political process that would be at work when ratification occurred would still be at work as it is now to subvert everything the people of this country want. So before I listen to people saying, we'll stop it, I want them to get up, kick this corrupt, sick party system to the curb, and prove that we are still an independent people who would stand to defend our Constitution. Because I don't see evidence of it now. I see evidence of partisan toadies so enslaved by a party system that has betrayed our country now for almost 20 years. that they refuse to rise up against it, say no to every one of its candidates, and insist on starting something new. If I saw that spirit in this country, then I believe we were safe with a constitutional convention.
I agree with that, Dr. Keys. I agree with every word. But here's what I struggle with. The founders, they didn't give us this Congress. They gave us Article 5. It's a tool or a weapon. We don't dare use it. The founders gave us a tool and we don't dare use it. Meanwhile, we are collapsing from within like the Roman Empire.
Croc TV.